These companies have been starved of automation and modern technology for so long, and they use it in every other aspect of their lives, right? All these people have smartphones. They're all, for the most part, pretty tech savvy, but the software just hasn't existed in this space yet. So when we're finally able to come in and develop these solutions, which we've done for a company in Illinois to date, they're so grateful for it.
This is the Startup Junkies podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Startup Junkies podcast. Thanks for tuning in from however you're tuning in with us today. My name is Caleb Talley, and I'm a proud member of the Startup Junkie team, joined today by Startup Junkie co-host Harrison. How's it going, Harrison?
It's going well. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Glad to have you back on the podcast. It's been a while.
Thank you. It's been a while. I'm excited, though.
And we're also excited to have a friend of ours, friend of Startup Junkies, friend of Fuels, Alex Kruchten. How's it going, man?
It's been good. 75 degrees outside today, so really appreciate it.
Yeah, we brought you down just for for that episode to
basically a beach vacation.
Be thawed out, for the podcast. Alex is with Hemet, a startup that our scaling venture that was a part of our most recent cohort of the Fuel Accelerator. And I'm not going to get into it. I'm going to let you kind of share the origin story there and tell the startup story, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll dive into the founding story of Hemet, which I think is a little bit unique. So unfortunately, he couldn't be here today, but it all started with my best friend, Chima. Now, Chima has a bit of an interesting personal story. He grew up on a chicken farm in Curacao, and up until the age of 11, he knew 7 people, 4 of whom were chickens. So a little bit unique. Then he moved to New York City, lived there for a little while. Unfortunately, when he was 16 years old, his family fell into some hardship, and he actually ended up homeless on the streets of New York City. The way he got out of that was by working a job at a motel, was pulling 80, 100-hour weeks just to stay off of the streets. Through that, he met a bunch of Punjabis who worked in trucking. He's Punjabi himself, and they kind of showed him the ropes. And so then around 16 years old, he moves to Fresno, California, and starts his own trucking company. And over the course of about 3 years, he ended up scaling it to $650,000 a month in revenue. Did a couple of other ventures, started a grocery store, started a restaurant, all of this before the age of 20. Eventually looked around, realized, hey, I don't have any friends my own age. My buddies, they're 50, 60, 70 years old, which he loved, but he was worried that in 20 years he might not have any friends left anymore. So he said, time for me to go back to school, meet some people my own age. Got his GED because never finished high school and ended up applying to UCLA. Get to campus my freshman year. I went to USC, he went to UCLA, crosstown rivals, but within our first week we'd met and became really good friends. And then over the course of our freshman year, just kind of did our own thing, stayed in touch. And then last December of 2024, he got in touch with me on this crazy idea. He was looking at all the new technologies emerging, studying computer science, really big into the VC space, and realized that voice agents and a lot of capabilities around those had the potential to totally revolutionize the work that he used to do as the owner of a trucking company. So he called up me and a couple of his other close friends and said, hey, I have this idea for $1 billion company. Let's start it. We were all like, sure, why not? Ran the company from our dorm rooms for the first couple months. We're fortunate enough to get into Y Combinator out in San Francisco back in spring of 2025. Graduated from that, landed our first major contract in Chicago, Illinois. So moved out there, brought the team with us, and that's where we've been ever since. Ended up raising about $1.8 million at a $30 million valuation, and then are creeping up on $1 million in booked revenue to date. So it's been a whirlwind 14 months, but it's been a blast, and I'm so excited to see how things continue.
So tell us a little bit about what problem does Hemet solve, essentially?
Yeah, exactly. So we make software for trucking companies. That's a very vague statement. So what problem are we actually solving? Now, when people think about supply chain, most of us tend to have a very simplistic view of it. You imagine a shipper on one side, so say this is a blueberry farm in California. You imagine a retailer on the other side, so let's say a Walmart in Bentonville, Arkansas. And then you imagine the logistics player who takes those goods from point A to point B. And in theory, it should be that simple. It should be that easy. But what actually ends up happening is the information about the shipment of goods. In other words, the contract to move that shipment of goods has to go through 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 communication intermediaries before it finally lands with that transportation company and then allows the goods to be moved. So the transportation company, your trucking company, still does 100% of the physical work, actually moving the goods from point A to point B. But it goes through all these different parties on the way there. And that has two major issues. One, it leads to value loss for the entire supply chain. But two, and most importantly, it takes a lot of money away from the trucking companies. Because if that contract was worth $5,000, by the time it actually gets to the trucking company, they might only be getting $2,500, $3,000 of that load, despite doing 100% of the work. So we essentially are creating a software system that will connect shippers to trucking companies, eliminating the need for all those middlemen.
And so you have a friend that gives you a call, you're in school, and says, I have an idea for $1 billion business. What is the initial reaction to
The initial reaction, actually, I got the call when I was surfing in Bali, Indonesia. So the initial reaction was, no, I don't want to do this. I'm like, I'm over here, I'm overseas. I already got enough going on. Like I'll refer you some of my friends, but go do this on your own. And then, gradually over the course of a month, he dragged me more and more into it. It started with, hey, can you help me with this one task? Hey, can you make a pitch deck for me? Hey, can you help manage this team? And then before I knew it, I was dropping out of school to help run the company full time. So I guess escalation of commitment, but one of the best decisions I ever made.
Is Hemet unique in this solution, or are there lots of companies doing something similar and y'all are just doing it far better, I suppose?
There are tons of companies who do what we do. And I guess I should coin the term for what our software is. It's called a TMS, which stands for Transportation Management System. The problem with most of these competitors is that they were developed in the 90s and early thousands. And any of you listening who run trucking companies, you will understand the issues that come with this. It's like if you or I were trying to do all of our modern day work, but instead of having Google Drive and ChatGPT and Zoom and all these amazing new technologies, we were still doing it with a dial phone, a pen and paper, and maybe an Excel sheet if you're lucky. That would be ridiculous for me to ask you to do your job like that, right? You would not want to do your work like that. The reality for 90% of trucking companies is that's how they still do their work because those TMSs, the software systems that they run on, are so archaic. So essentially what makes us different from our competitors is we are taking all of these new innovative technologies and we are building that TMS from the ground up with those technologies in mind. So that way, the end user, the trucking company, gets all the automation, all the seamless workflows that modern technology has to offer.
What's the reception been like from trucking companies about you trying to kind of develop that technology? Because obviously if they're so used to such an old system, have you had any kind of resilience to modernizing that?
That's what you would think. But what we've actually found, it's like having a glass of cold water in a desert. These companies have been starved of automation and modern technology for so long, and they use it in every other aspect of their lives, right? All these people have smartphones. They're all, for the most part, pretty tech savvy. But the software just hasn't existed in this space yet. So when we're finally able to come in and develop these solutions, which we've done for a company in Illinois to date, they're so grateful for it. And it honestly has been not an easy transition because you do have to teach how to use these new tools, but that's a fairly short process. And once they see how much easier it makes their lives, couldn't be happier to have it.
What's that ideal customer look like? Who kind of in that spectrum of, the industry itself is pretty antiquated in terms of tools. You talk about the pen and paper. A lot of them are even like clocking in with paper a lot of times. So what does that ideal customer look like in terms of size of the company or kind of where they are in adoption of other services and things like that?
Yeah. So our ideal customer profile is medium to large trucking companies. Reason being is as the organization gets bigger, as you have more trucks to manage, the more and more software that manages your data and automates your work becomes useful, right? Because if you're just managing 2, 3, 4, 5 trucks, you're able to get away with that on pen and paper with these old school tools. So we really focus on trucking companies that have anywhere from 200 to several thousand trucks. And then we work with all aspects of the company because it is an ERP solution, which stands for Enterprise Resource Platform, which means that it will encompass every single aspect of your organization. So really just large trucking companies, that sums it up.
How many companies are you currently working with, and what does that look like for the future, I suppose?
Yeah. So this last year has mainly been focused on product development. We want to make sure that the software that we're putting to market is as good as it can possibly be.
Yeah.
So for that reason, we've taken a slightly different approach than most startups. Rather than chasing hyperscale to begin with, we've instead focused on 2 key clients in building out software systems specifically for them. Now, we strategically chose these clients to be representative of the industry as a whole. And what we've done is something a little bit unique, and we've actually co-located our entire team in the offices of these clients. So what does that actually mean? That means every single day we're pushing code, we're upgrading the software, and then we're walking across the office to ask Bill in accounting or Janet in dispatching, hey, is this work? Is this what you want? Is this solving the problems that you need? Taking their feedback and going through that process tens, if not hundreds of times, with the goal being that by the time we've perfected the solution for this client, we will have a product that is perfect for the rest of the market. Because we're also building it in a way where it can be applied to other companies, right? Just making sure that we have that user input from the very beginning.
Sounds like the most efficient customer discovery I've ever heard, to be honest.
We definitely do things a little bit differently than most tech companies. I think a lot of times you imagine them being in their little ivory tower in San Francisco or overseas, right? And they're kind of just getting tasks in and coming out. No, we literally live in the offices of our clients. And I think that is the reason we've had so much success so early.
It shrinks that reaction time to feedback and that feedback loop to be able to iterate in real time on behalf of the company that you're serving.
Yeah, it goes from months to weeks to days, if not minutes. It was actually a model that was coined by Palantir. And I mean, look how successful they've been. And so you're starting to see in the startup world that a lot more companies are adopting this. We've just really taken it to that extreme with like physically locating in the client's office 7 days out of the week.
And so speak a little bit to that Y Combinator experience and kind of how that impacted the trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. So the analogy I always give for Y Combinator is it's kind of like going to Harvard in the sense that, what benefits do you get from going to Harvard? Well, you get a really nice name on your resume and you get a lot of amazing connections and a pretty damn good education. That's what I would liken YC2 for us. We went in, it was a 60-day sprint. And we came out of it with credibility in the startup world, which, when you're a young company means more than anything. And we got all the connections we could ever need. They introduced us to investors. They introduced us to technology partners. They introduced us to potential employees. It really was a major blessing for our company. I think anyone who has a startup idea should be trying to get into that program.
And then fast forward, a few months, and you are here in Northwest Arkansas participating in the Fuel Accelerator program. So speak a little bit to kind of what about that program, given just kind of the trajectory you're on and some of the other programs that you've participated in or engaged in. What about the Fuel program you thought was worth participating in?
Yeah, so I have glowing things to say about the Fuel program.
That's what we were hoping, right?
I loved it, honestly. I love it. I mean, it's 4 months later and I'm still here in Northwest Arkansas. So obviously, your guys' goal worked out. But when it comes to what specifically we loved about the Fuel Accelerator, first off, it was very different than YC in the sense that, YC is very broad and it's also more so geared towards preparing you for fundraising. Whereas, Fuel kind of comes in, it takes those companies who have already maybe raised around, who already have some traction, which was us at the time, and it prepares them for sales scaling, right? So enterprise sales, making sure that you understand how those processes work and that you're prepared to execute them in a repeatable way. And that's exactly what it taught me to do. I got so much feedback and learning from the experts that the Fuel Accelerator brought in. But I think the biggest point of value was the introduction that Fuel gave me to the Northwest Arkansas network. I think Northwest Arkansas is a freaking gem because it has all of the connections and wealth and opportunity of a major city. Maybe not a New York or Chicago, but definitely a tier 2 city. Yet it still has that super close, tight-knit community that you would find in a small town. And so because of that, once Fuel Accelerator gave me those initial introductions into the community, I found that I was able to meet and talk to anyone really that I could ever want to. And that it wasn't just, an introduction and, hey, go talk to this person. It was friendly. It was people who wanted to speak to you. I'd say by far and away, the network it gave me in Northwest Arkansas, which is an extremely underrated place to be as a business, was the most valuable thing I got out of Fuel Accelerator.
Is that what keeps you here?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's why I'm still here today. I mean, in full transparency, our company's still headquartered in Chicago, although we want to move it here to Arkansas eventually. I spend about half my time in Chicago, half my time here in Northwest Arkansas. The entire reason for that is to continue to nurture that network, to continue to build on those relationships, because there's so much opportunity in this space.
Yeah, what else keeps you in Northwest Arkansas, I suppose? That was going to be my next question, because you've obviously got a wealth of different people, but I guess living here, how have you found that in terms of Northwest Arkansas?
Yeah, so this is how do I like living in Northwest Arkansas?
That's how it works.
Because it's a big difference. I know you are a big traveler.
Yeah.
And you have seen the world. You have been to some crazy, crazy places, had some great experiences. And Northwest Arkansas is beautiful. I'm living here. But what is it that keeps you coming back when you have been a world traveler, so to speak?
Yeah, so I think I said this at the opening conference for Fuel, which is that I traded Milan for Bentonville, which I stand by. It's a pretty good decision, but it is true. I've been to a lot of different places. Over the last 2 years, I've lived in Chicago, Minneapolis, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Hong Kong, as well as been around to a bunch of different places in Europe and Asia. For me, Northwest Arkansas has two really big charm points. One, it reminds me a ton of my hometown. I grew up in a city called Rockford, Illinois. It's on the border with Wisconsin, maybe 150,000 people, small, medium-sized Midwestern town. And Northwest Arkansas, specifically Fayetteville, Bentonville, has that tight-knit, gritty, all-American Midwestern feel. But on top of that, it has the opportunity of a major city. It's like I come down here and I see all these different restaurants, which are world class. All of these cool bars, all of the art museums, right? Like Crystal Bridges. That's something that you would expect to see in like a massive city, but you have it here in this, comparatively tiny town. It's like you have all of the appeal and charm and quality of life and culture and community of a, small, medium-sized central U.S. city, but all of the amenities of a massive city. And it doesn't hurt that the weather is certainly a lot nicer than Chicago too.
It can be, yeah. The Startup Junkies podcast is brought to you in part by Arise. Arise helps Arkansas tech and tech-enabled startups grow with no-cost coaching, capital navigation, and expert connections so founders can scale faster. Learn more at arisearkansas.org.
I want to hear a little bit about your own personal entrepreneurial story. You've talked a bit about Hemet and how that's been built, but what has driven you to entrepreneurship, and so far in your life, kind of what has brought you down that path, I suppose?
Yeah, so I think it started with my blood. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Literally every single person on my dad's side of the family has started and ran their own business at one point or another. Now, have any of them worked in tech? No, definitely not. My family, I think, barely knows how to use a smartphone. We're very box standard Midwestern people. But I grew up in that environment where everyone was entrepreneurial, where everyone was a go-getter, where everyone was extremely charismatic and people-oriented. And so I learned from a super young age the value of taking risks as well as just building connections with people. And so because of that, I was very drawn to business. I was fortunate enough to get into a really unique business program for my undergrad called the World Bachelor in Business. So through that, I spent my freshman year at USC in LA, my sophomore year at Hong Kong University of Science and Technology in Hong Kong. My junior and senior year would have been in Milan, Italy at Bocconi. And the beauty of the program is you graduate with 3 degrees, one from each university, but it's more so about what does that teach you in your life, right? Think about what you have to go through. Every 12 months, you are picking up your entire life and you are moving it across the world. And so I just think the level of independence and agency that builds in someone is going to give them that desire to go start their own business. And so I shifted once I had the opportunity. I think the bud was always within me. I thought I was going to go be a strategy consultant. Still have that in the back of my mind. But when I got the opportunity to start and run my own company alongside my best friend, it it just felt so right. It felt like such a natural fit. And I think that goes back to my family roots.
Makes it damn near impossible to clock into a 9 to 5.
Yeah, I did the 9 to 5 for a little bit. I worked at Northrop Grumman in Minneapolis. Amazing company, incredible culture, great people. And they did so much for me while I was working there. But I realized pretty quickly I can never do this. It's just, for me, it's too slow paced. I need the hustle and bustle of either, the high end consulting world or the, scrappy startup world.
So what's on the trajectory? What's on the map? The game plan, looking ahead to the future.
Yeah.
Next year, next 6 months to a year. What are we looking at?
Yeah. So we think we think in a lot of different phases. We go as short as 1 week sprints, like that's what we operate on. But then we have ideally our next 20 years planned out as well, which I don't think I can speak to too much in case any of our competitors are watching, but I can definitely speak to the next 6 months until we get to the end of the summer. We are just about to fully deploy our full software suite in our partner clients' offices. At which point, barring a couple of iterations, a couple of bug fixes, the product should be ready to scale pretty aggressively. So me as the sales and marketing lead for the company, I have been over the last couple of months building out all of the systems and material, as well as training up the team to support that hyper expansion. So, hope is within the coming 2, 3, 4 months that we are going from, the situation we've kept ourselves in, which is a few select clients, to rapidly expanding our software across the industry space. So it's a really exciting time. It's that moment where I really think the exponential point on the graph is going to be hit.
And what aspect of that are you most excited about? I know there's plenty to be excited, but like what keeps you up at night?
Oh, the people. Yeah. Absolutely the people. Truckers are some of the most fun people in the world to work with because they're just like, so like, how do I put this? Like, down to earth, like straight to the point. Like I've had some hilarious interactions already working in the offices because it is the opposite of like corporate politically correct speak. You go into a trucking office and you hear the wildest stories and hear the craziest things. And it's just like having that as like your daily working environment is so much fun and so entertaining. So I'm just already starting to think about, okay, like, 9 months from now, after I've been in 50 different trucking offices, what are all the just hilarious and weird stories I'm going to have from talking to these people?
Do you enjoy, I suppose, getting to meet so many different people? We've talked about the different places you've been, and now you seem really excited about meeting and hanging out with truckers. And, even your co-founder, you mentioned how all his friends were 50, 60, 70-year-olds. Are you guys kind of just in love with meeting different people, I suppose? Is that fair?
By far and away, I think the best part of life.
Yeah.
I think life is all about relationships. It's all about building connections with people. And what I've found as I've traveled and I've thrown myself into these different ventures is that the wider a net of types of people that you talk to, the more you grow internally, right? I'm only 21 years old. Would be in my 3rd year of college, but I feel like I have 5-10 years more experience than that. And I think that comes down to the fact that I have had so many conversations and learned so many valuable lessons from such a wide variety of people. It's also just fun to hear the stories.
What are some of the biggest lessons do you think you've learned from talking to all the different people that you've spoken to?
Biggest
lessons. It might be a hard question to answer on the spot.
That's an extremely hard question. Let me try and think of some that have stood out. I wouldn't say that this is a lesson I've learned from a specific person, but rather a lesson I've learned from talking to so many people, which is that at our core, everyone is the same. Doesn't matter if you're from America, if you're from China, if you're from Europe, if you work in tech, if you work in trucking, it really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, people value honest, genuine connection. And what I have learned is that just by being transparent and open-hearted and genuinely trying to form relationships with the people that I've met, it has taken me so much further than I think any sort of networking principle would take you. I mean, I think people talk about networking, and they talk about how do you do it strategically? How do you do it right? What do you say? What do you not say? I say throw all of that out the window. Just be yourself, honestly try and learn about the other person, and you're going to get so much farther than you ever thought you would, both in the business world and also you'll just have so many incredible, genuine friends. So I think to answer your question, because I gave a bit of a long-winded answer there, the biggest thing that I've learned is there's nothing more valuable you can do than just building genuine relationships with everyone that you meet.
Yeah, I think that rings true, and I think most folks in kind of networking settings or who are have an intent to network can potentially lose sight of the fact that the most important thing you can do is be genuinely interested in the person you're talking to, and not necessarily approaching networking engagements or even just meeting individuals, whether it's in a networking event or out on the street. Is being genuinely interested in what they're about them and what they want, need, who they are, as opposed to pursuing a transactional component to an interaction, because there's nothing more frustrating. We do a lot of networking events at Startup Junkies, a ton, and I've seen all types who engage in networking in various different ways, and you can almost you could have avatars of these individuals and how they engage on a networking perspective, and the ones that you're having conversation with, and you could just see that they're waiting for you to finish what you're saying, so that they can tell you what they're doing or building, so they can sell you on something, or approach you with the intent to kind of get you interested on this, that, or the other. But the most meaningful conversations always happen around things that might not even pertain necessarily to work, just like your life and interest and what matters. And so I think finding that common chord with folks, to your point, is very, very important.
No, and building off of what you just said, which is you said something specific which really caught my ear, which is you see so many people who are just waiting for the other person to finish speaking so they can jump in and speak. But I think the best thing you can do in a conversation is listen with intent and then formulate your response based upon that. And I think that helps in every aspect of business.
Absolutely.
And just life in general.
Yeah. Follow up with a question. Tell me more.
It must be tiring going into networking events like that. I can't. We do so many networking events throughout the year, and if I didn't go in there and have the occasional conversation about the NFL or whatever it must be, it would be so tiring having to sell myself at every single event. I can't even imagine.
Absolutely. What would you be interested in our listeners, across Arkansas, across the U.S.? What do you want them to know about Hemet?
I think the biggest thing is not the traction, is not the Y Combinator status, is not the fundraising, is not the goals, is not even the product or what we're selling. I think what I would really want listeners to know about Hemet is just how unique our team is. Because at the end of the day, we're a group of 20-something odd college students who had an idea, were best friends before it, started a company, and have somehow taken that from our dorm rooms to where we are today, and are on a mission to genuinely change and help a $1 trillion industry. I mean, we live in the same big house in Illinois. We spend every waking moment of our lives together, from the moment we get up, we eat breakfast together, go to the office, we ride in the same bus that we've painted like our team's colors together, like a little school bus that we bought and then painted. We spend the weekends together. Like, it is just such a unique culture. I think for those of the listeners that have been in Greek life, I think it's like being in a frat or a sorority. But instead of, maybe partying a little bit too more than you should, you're just working on trying to solve like this massive problem.
I was about to say, it sounds like you're still getting the college experience without being in college almost.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just it's so much fun. So I think by far and away, what I would want people to know is, when you work with us, when you partner with us as a team, you are partnering with people that genuinely dedicate 24 hours of every single day, 365 years a day to the mission, to the agreement that you're partnering with, not out of formality, not because it pays the bills, but because of the fact that we love it and it literally is our life.
Yeah, I mean, you live there, you live together, you share all that time together. It is almost like a reality show could be filmed.
I've heard,
on set.
I haven't seen it yet, but Grace from Fuel keeps telling me about Silicon Valley. And she's like, it sounds like you guys are like living that experience. I have to watch it, but yeah, it definitely could
Put it
be
on your
a
list.
reality TV show.
So we typically land the plane, kind of wrap the conversations with a question that we've kind of already touched on a little bit, but we'll revisit it just in case. But we always ask our guests if they had the opportunity to go back in time, and given your age, you probably don't have to go back too far. But always ask our guests to go back in time and have a conversation with their younger self. Perhaps it's before they jumped, with both feet into that endeavor, or even further back with all the accumulated knowledge you have now. So not advice you've gleaned from all those interactions that you've had, but perhaps advice that you would give your younger self. What advice would you give your younger self if you went back in time?
That's a great question. And I know exactly what I would say, which is I would tell my younger self, do not be afraid of risks, seek them. And luckily, up until this point, for the most part, I've done that. But what I've learned is that with every risk I've taken, whether I've failed, whether I've succeeded, because there's been just as many, if not way more failures than there's been successes, it has ultimately led me to grow so much faster than maybe my peers and the people around me. Because when you take a risk, you put yourself in a new uncomfortable situation and you push yourself to the point of failure. And that is really where growth and learning and progression happens. And so, the motto I have to live at least the next 10 years of my life, before I have to worry about the responsibilities of a family and what could happen if something really goes wrong, is when an opportunity arises, when something seems interesting, when something seems like it could happen, don't worry about whether or not you have to be that 1 in a million to make it happen. Just take the chance and go for it. And at the end of the day, either you'll succeed or you'll fail. But if you fail, there's literally nothing stopping you from going and doing the exact same thing. You can do it 1,000, 1,000,000 times until eventually you get it right.
That's great advice.
Well, where can our audience, if they're looking to kind of get connected to you, get connected to Hemet, where can they go to make those next steps?
Yeah. So we just launched a new website, Hemet.com. So that's HEMUT.com. And that has all of our contact information. It has my Calendly. It has my LinkedIn as well. So going to there would get people anywhere that they want to be. It also has all of my team's contact information as well, in case you'd want to talk to our engineer or Chima, our CEO, or our head of marketing, or whoever you would like.
Thanks for joining us today. This is a great conversation.
Yeah.
Glad to have you back.
And thank you guys so much for having me. It's nice to be back in the Startup Junkie space.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, sir.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share with a friend. Subscribe and review because it matters to us and we want to hear from you. If you're interested in learning how to work with us, check out the information below. See you next week.